Hi, my name's Dominic.
And I'm Connor.
We just watched Princess
Mononoke.
Mononoke.
It's the 9th Studio Ghibli film, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, super famous.
Came out in 1997.
20-year anniversary, there you go. That was unintentional, but it happened. We did it.
Yep.
This is my area of expertise because I love Studio Ghibli. I have seen I've seen a lot of their films. I really enjoy them. They're definitely the best anime films I've seen. Definitely some of the best animated films I've seen. And I have to admit, this one is not top 3. Not up there. No, not a huge fan.
This is my first Studio Ghibli film.
Which is startling.
We'll probably watch more. I'll definitely watch more on my own time. I might not talk about it here.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do any more for this, but certainly on our own time, because they're great movies.
And if they're as good as this one, then I don't mind watching them, and if they're better, then that's good. This one, it was an alright movie. The voice acting was really good, except for 2 places, and they were both where characters laughed.
Yeah, the laugh, there was one laugh that was, really obvious, and, it almost seemed fake, but in the context of the movie, it wasn't supposed to be fake. I actually think it looked like an audio mixing error, almost.
Yeah, I agree, because it came in 20 decibels louder than everything else.
Yeah. But, I don't know, this is pretty old. Some of the recording, they might have had recording issues, I don't blame them. The plot is, it's a thinly veiled environmental message in a medieval fantasy story.
I don't think... Well, it was definitely environmental, don't get me wrong, but it also had a lot to do with over-consumerism and what that can lead to.
Yeah, it was basically disparaging, opportunist, almost empire building. Definitely, abusing nature and stuff for personal gain. But one of my problems with it is that it's basically shown that no one's the bad guy. The people who are clearly the antagonists do terrible things, but there's not much repercussion.
Even the main character himself, who's supposedly...
He's super morally ambiguous, and in a cleaner movie, I can totally understand that, but in this, I just didn't know who he was fighting for. It's unclear. Animation-wise,
it looked really good. I remember right at the very beginning, I was like, wow, those rocks look really good. And that might sound silly because they're rocks, but it just, because everything was hand-drawn, it was obvious that they put a lot of effort into it. I remember at one point, one of the characters said, "You've got rice on your face," and in the next scene he did, which is rare in anime.
Yeah, I actually think some of the action scenes in this were done digitally. I believe this is one of the first anime films to be somewhat done digitally, but Ghibli is really, really up on tradition and stuff like that, so they probably drew a lot of it personally. Yeah, I don't know. It's the message is obvious. It's very oh no, these people whose town is entirely revolving around iron and industrialization are trying to kill a literal forest god. And it's just oh, so we're going to protect the forest. That's what this movie's about.
I'm rather environmental. It's very important to me. But I don't like ham-fistedness in a place where it doesn't need to be ham-fisted. And this was definitely ham-fisted.
Yeah, and that's my problem with it, because with the other Ghibli films I've seen, My Neighbor Totoro, one of the main plot points of My Neighbor Totoro are these small children trying to deal with their mother who has a terminal illness. And they do it very subtly. And it's nice, it's pleasant, but there are moments where it's very sad. In this movie, in Princess Mononoke, it's just people who hurt environment are people who exploit environment are bad.
This movie had some funny parts, and it had some really funny parts. But none of them...
I think some of them were unintentionally funny.
Yeah, when it was trying to show how strong he was, he shoots an arrow, and this dude's arms come clean off.
And they get attached by the arrow to a tree.
Yeah, and then there's another point where he shoots a dude and his head comes off.
And it just like, boop, it just like pops off.
That made me laugh my butt off, actually. I really enjoyed that. What else was really funny? There was any time where it was trying to show he was strong or good with a bow was funny.
Yeah, because like the point was that his arm was possessed, so he was like overly strong. He was like demon strong. And anytime they tried to show it, it was just ridiculous. It was almost like campy.
Oh, one thing that I didn't like, other than the list of complaints we've already said, was that it did a really good job handling a lot of things, like plot-wise. It never felt like something was happening to forward the plot, except for at the very beginning, where something's chasing him, and he leads it to his village instead of running in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that was dumb, but I don't know, a split-second decision isn't that... It's excusable, I think. The characters I think they're well characterized. There are like 4 main characters. There's the prince, the main character. He's the main character. There's Princess Mononoke, who is super important.
And she thinks she's a wolf.
Well, she was raised by wolves, but she's not.
And then she started Rome. She didn't start Rome.
Yeah, she didn't. That's a history joke. A myth joke, actually. I forgot to mention, I love the animation of this. I would give it like a 9 out of 10 just for animation, but the rest of the movie doesn't quite match.
There was obviously a lot of time and effort put into this film, and I appreciate that. It's nice to see.
And it's by far the darkest Ghibli film. Like, it's all about... People die, like, left and right in this. It's very brutal.
It has a lot of gore scenes that kind of gross me out. And
yeah, it's almost like trypophobia, and everyone hates that.
Well, what does trypophobia mean?
It's like fear of like little tiny circles, like a ton of them, like a net. It's super common. It's one of those things that's like really inherently human. Most humans have trypophobia.
They're afraid of circles?
It's like, well, there's this one scene of worms in the movie, and the worms like sprout out all over a character's body, and that's like trypophobia, straight up. It's just like a ton of really small things, like, eek. Don't look it up. Don't Google trypophobia. It's disgusting. But yeah, I think the gross out is necessary with this kind of a grim fantasy tone. It fits. It's just, I thought the story was very incoherent. I thought it was hard to understand where things were going and why.
There were many subplots because I think one of the points of this movie was that everyone was doing what they thought was sincerely the best thing, even though some of them were blatantly corrupt. And I think it tried to show that by giving each character like a life and showing good and bad points of what they've done. Like, one of the characters, she was definitely a bad person, but she bought a bunch of brothel workers, and she made them do iron instead. She gave them like a town and gave them a purpose.
And she was like freeing them. She was like a liberator, and that's like really respectable, but she also wanted to burn down the entire forest with no hesitation, you know?
Yeah, and then there's this priest, which, you know, inherently has good connotation with most people.
He's probably the most confusing character, I thought.
And
because in the beginning, he's like the best friend of the prince. He's like super nice to him, leads him on his way.
And then he's the main antagonist at the end.
Yeah, he's literally like the worst villain.
Yeah. The prince himself, he was shown to be like, yeah, I'm just, because his original quest was to just not die because he was cursed, and then he gets wrapped up on this.
He gets wrapped up in the two conflicting, the ironworks people and the forest with Princess Mononoke.
And then I won't lie, I personally am a fan of heroes who don't start off as heroes, maybe reluctantly. But I just don't think this handled it as best as it could have.
Because the problem with it is that, at the end, he doesn't really do anything heroic. He doesn't bring any justice. He just, like, does a thing that was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
It seemed like. It seemed as if things were just going to return to natural, like, regardless of whether it was him or whether he did it. And another problem I had is that some of the characters in the movie do really horrible things, and they're just never punished for it. I guess I've said that already, but it's just I hate that lack of catharsis at the end of the movie. Like the villain's fine, nothing happens.
It had a touching part at the very end where the ordinary people realized what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah, they understood that, like, even though they were working in their own interests, they weren't working in the world interests almost.
It was really, I thought it was sweet.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I know what you're talking about. We're
Um,
trying to avoid spoilers, which I guess is awkward for a 20-year-old movie.
in Japan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to respect this movie for it's one of those movies that managed to make its way into America and managed to become really popular here.
It used to be on Cartoon Network.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how, because it's pretty gory.
Ghibli films played a lot on Cartoon Network, and I really respect them for that, because I saw, like, Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle as a kid, and even though I don't remember them very well now, I mean, they did play the dub. They played the Disney dub, because Disney owns the rights to a lot of these movies. But I really respect that they aired such. A lot of them are almost culturally relevant, especially My Neighbor Totoro. I don't know if that ever aired on Cartoon Network though. But yeah, animation on this is amazing. Sound design's great. We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, the sound. I thought the track was generally unforgettable. I only remember one song actually, and it was kind of near the end. It had a heavy piano, but even that was not impressive.
I would say that the music is one of those scores that's very fitting, but you just can't listen to it on its own. Like, it's great, but it doesn't hold up outside.
I don't completely agree. I don't think it's that great, personally, but that's just because of my taste in music.
That's fair. I could probably listen to the score to this outside, but that's just because I really like Ghibli music. It's so good. This one, definitely not their best, though. Not their best work.
I'd say overall, this is like Ghibli watered down. Nothing seems to be their best based on the standards.
It almost seems like they were trying to break the mold of their own strategy. It's their 9th film, and most of their movies are pretty kid-friendly. They're pretty pleasant, almost.
This was the edgy...
This was very edgy.
This was the edgy stepchild.
It wasn't bad, but, like, they focused a lot on the gore, the grim, the realism, almost. Not really, but...
Yeah, there's nothing realistic about a dude's head coming off with an arrow.
Well,
and then one thing that bothered me was the way they handled bow physics, because there's at one point where he has a notched arrow for a good 2 minutes, and on a recurve bow like he has, and it's definitely a recurve because you see him attach and unattach the string with ease, there is absolutely no way that he could hold that. He's skin and bones. He looks like he's 16 years old, maybe.
He really does. Yeah, that's pretty silly, but I can forgive that.
I just think for a movie that paid so much attention to detail with rice on the face, it could have handled it better.
The physics are pretty bad. I will 100% admit that. There are a couple scenes where they jump unreasonable distances down and up.
And then there's one scene where he's going down a cliff, but his legs are really tired, which makes sense because he hasn't been on them for a while. And then he like stands there and like looks at the camera before collapsing, and it's so silly.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I guess my legs are weak."
Yeah, that's pretty charming. It was pretty funny, actually.
There's a really gross scene where the girl drinks wolf blood, which I don't understand.
It's the first scene she's in, and we were just like, what? That's the worst introduction you could have done? That's disgusting.
To this point, I still don't understand why it was relevant. It's actually the poster for the movie.
Honestly, yeah, I see what you mean. It didn't really have any relevance to the movie. I don't know why she did it. That's never explained.
I mean, maybe it was to show that she was cool and edgy, just like the movie?
I mean, she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no human.
That's not quite it. If you're familiar with meme culture, you might have seen a couple things. One is the arms falling off and flailing.
I've definitely seen that.
It's a common gif. Another one is where she is talking about how she can't be a human.
It's a really emotional scene near the end. I really liked it, like, story-wise, but I can see how you could meme it.
And it said talking to a furry. the meme, of course. It was pretty funny. Um, I didn't think this movie evoked much emotion in me because it seemed like this could almost be a TV show with how expansive they wanted everything to be.
Yeah, that's one of its problems, its lack of focus. It jumps around plots a lot. I mean, it does it cleanly. It's not like an awkward edit, in some worse movies. But it doesn't give enough attention to the main conflict for me to care.
I agree.
And all the stuff that wanted to bring you emotion to the main conflict make you hate the villains. So at the end, when they don't die, you're just like, come on, do something.
I agree. One thing that I did like is that this movie did symbolism decently well, but the thing it did the best was it picked the perfect animals for everything.
Oh yeah, the animals.
Like
it uses animals very well.
Yeah. Like there's a boar tribe and they're proud and they're kind of dumb, and that makes sense because pigs, even domesticated ones, go feral in like 9 months. The wolves acted like dogs, except that they weren't as nice. So I didn't like that. Bring dogs back.
Yeah, the apes are pretty much just in the beginning of the movie. Oh yeah, we said we kind of wanted them to come back, and they just never do.
They're interesting.
I mean, I think they're good because they're selfish, they're inconsiderate, they're kind of human, which I think is ironic. And then there was the deer god, who is a main character, the deer god.
He looks so ugly and messed up.
He looked really creepy.
Every time he looked at the camera, it reminded me of... This movie reminded me a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender because of visuals. Like,
yeah,
the human tribes reminded me of the Fire Nation a lot, especially when they burned down the entire forest. The deer reminded me of when Aang goes into, or as the movie calls him, Ong, goes into the spirit world. He goes into the spirit world, and there's something that if you show any emotion, it eats your face. That's what it reminded me of.
You're gonna love Spirited Away.
It reminded me a lot.
Spirited Away is a lot more similar to that. Like, really similar.
Nice.
But, yeah, the deer god almost reminded me of, like, an eldritch abomination, like something Lovecraftian. Which was, I think, the intention. Almost the idea that a deity would be more complicated and greater than anything we know. Which I think is pretty cool.
One thing that was cool is that...
It's disturbing.
It showed that on the outside it was, like, healing and, like, good. But on the inside, the terrible force that is nature, when messed with, was unleashed. And it destroyed everything. And I think that's symbolic for a lot of what Japan deals with. Because they deal with earthquakes and tsunamis. They don't... Right?
Oh, yeah, they fight with nature. It's a constant thing throughout history.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes nature helps them, like when the Chinese tried to invade, and the kamikaze storms said no.
No.
So I think that to someone Japanese, the whole fighting and helping nature thing might be a lot more culturally important.
Yeah, I think this will resonate really well with people who are very deep with nature and understand that it's very powerful, but can be very kind if used right, I suppose. It didn't hit with me that well. I don't think it hit with Dominic that well.
It hit with me decently well. I'm a nature guy.
I love nature, but I don't like how they handled it, personally.
I like nature, and I liked how they handled it at the very end. And
the very end is probably the best part of the movie.
But throughout it gave nature such an inconsistent feel, and I don't think nature's inconsistent. Even in Ohio, where we have 4 seasons, and one day it snows, and the next it's 60 degrees.
Literally happened, by the way.
The inconsistency is the consistency of nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost the beauty of, I don't know, fickleness.
Yeah.
So should we give our ratings?
Yeah, I'm gonna give this movie a 6.2, not 3.
Really?
6.203.
I think I'd give it a 6.5. The visuals are stunning. The sound design, perfect. You can't go wrong there. Story, incoherent, kind of a mess. Directing is fine. Nothing crazy wrong there. Could be, like I said, could be more coherent.
Voice acting, a few hiccups. Sound, utterly average. Visuals, fantastic. Visuals were fantastic. Story, interesting, yet incoherent. Like I said, maybe if this was a miniseries, like 2 or 3 or even 4 hour long things.
Yeah, I think you can handle, like, if this was like 4 separate like sub stories set in the same universe, you would really nail it with this. But in this format as a movie, I understand it's based on a novel. So
Oh,
the
is it?
novel's probably a lot better.
Is this based on a novel?
It is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is kind of surprising. A lot of Ghibli films are original, but this one is based on a novel. Um, yeah, I think it'd be better in a novel. I might read it someday just for fun, because I think that'd be pretty interesting. But
Yeah, it was.
not my favorite Ghibli film.
Overall, it was good. Thanks for listening, and this is Zoom Reviews signing out.